Hello, everyone. It is so nice to be with all of you. I'm Ariella Morkowitz, the founding director of SVIVAH. SVIVAH is about creating a more nourishing communal faith experience for Jewish women, where we define both Jewish and women very broadly. If you want to be with us, we want you to be with us and welcome. We love that we are multi-generational and diverse in our backgrounds and affiliations, and we grow so much from our differences coming together in celebration and support of women, our strengths, our unique perspectives, and our unique ways of contributing to the world. HerTorah is an amazing program of SVIVAH directed by Rabbi Elisa Sperling, gathering together a diverse community of Jewish women who come to our Jewish texts, bringing their lived experience in an effort to learn more from each other and grow from the sharing, coming together with women who they might not meet in traditional settings, learning and growing from each other and what we have to offer each other through the richness of our tradition and our texts. Usually we meet in person and or on Zoom, but this month of Elul, leading up to the high holidays, we're trying something different, where we are gathering some spectacular scholars, educators, thinkers, leaders, and asking them how they might be preparing for the new year and the high holidays to come, and asking them to share it with us so that in this crazy busy month of August, we can also join them in preparing for these high holidays that are going to be knocking on our door before we know it. Before we get started and I get to introduce our fabulous, fabulous guest for today, a thank you to those who make HerTorah possible. First, to the fabulous Rabbanit Elisa Sperling, whose creativity and visioning is everything that is HerTorah, and so thoughtful in how she brings us together and opportunities to learn with and from one another. Next to Yeshivat Maharat, who is such a wonderful partner in elevating women's Torah scholarship and women's voices, and to the Aviv and Covenant Foundations for their faith in HerTorah to create a unique way of learning together in community. I am so excited to be able to introduce the fantastic Rabbi Sara Luria, who I'm just like excited that I get to hang out with you today, which is so much fun. For your bio is too brief to explore the magnitude of who you are and how you show up. I'm going to take the liberty and describe you as one of my biggest role models in the language of disruption, seeing things that need to be changed and improved upon, from your work in creating Immerse NYC, which totally radicalized what the experience of the mikvah ritual was, to the creation of Beloved Brooklyn, which is a whole new way of looking at what being together in community and exploring Judaism together in community looks like. And now you get to be the director of this amazing community of beloved-like communities, teaching people and sharing with people how to come together in ways that feel nourishing and meaningful. And I love that. I love how you are and who you are, which is why I'm so excited to have you here today. I want to start by saying happy summer. I hope it's been a good one.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for being this Jewish leader who is so thoughtful, and in how you show up yourself, for leading your own communities and offering us some of that wisdom today. And so just to start off, I'd love to ask you, in theme of Elul this month, preparing for the high holidays, could you share something that you are reflecting on in terms of this theme of Teshuvah, in terms of, how, I'll let you define it because it can be defined in different ways, but how you're thinking about that this year?
Thank you so much. What a beautiful introduction. I am so touched. I can't even, I'm like, that's enough. We don't need to even talk because that was so beautiful. And you really captured like the essence of what I'm trying to communicate to people. And you really understood the depth of what each of my organizations that I founded are. I'm just really touched. So first of all, thank you. So I have to say that in thinking about Teshuvah this year, I was primarily a parent this year. That was my the role that was most forward in my heart, in my body, in my day-to-day. I felt that when we had to close beloved Brooklyn's house, that when I was at Beloved, I was acting in a parent-like role for a lot of people, you know, like checking in and how are you, and sit down and come have a cup of tea and tell me your stories and let's sing together, let's pray together. It felt like I got to be the mama bird for a lot of beautiful humans, a lot of beautiful chicks. and that was good. That was on purpose. It wasn't like transference in the worst sense. It was transference in the best sense. Of just like, how can we family each other? How can we, and that I think about a lot, is just like, how can we sister and brother and mother and father each other, and all of the non-binary in-betweens, so that we can feel part of a caring family of creation, not necessarily of origin, maybe of origin, but really of creation. And so, and that felt right to me at Beloved. And when the pandemic hit, it was just clear that the family I needed to focus on was the family of my 3 children and my partner, Isaac, who needed me absolutely the most and who I needed to focus on. And so when I think about Teshuvah this year, I think about my children, and most I think about my daughter, Eva, who was a 3rd grader last year. She's a rising 4th grader. And she just had the world's worst year. I mean, everyone, you know, had the world's worst year in different ways. But I felt Eva, she holds all of her feelings on her chest, on her sleeve, on her externally. And she felt full of rage. She was, we had COVID in the beginning of March of 2020. So we had COVID in the beginning, and she had rage. Just, how could you get sick? How could you be this tired? How could I not be with my friends? How could I have to stay home? You love the brothers more. You know, how could, you know, everything, just rage, full of rage. And right. She was right. I mean, not that I love the brothers more, but she was right in the sense that everything was terrible and it wasn't fair, and it was, and she was right. How could the world flip upside down so quickly? And I think we all processed it in different ways, and Eva processed it through external rage, internal and external rage. And there were days when I would want to run away. Because the rage was mostly directed at me, and we had to take her out of Zoom school. So it was me and her, and there was just so much anger that there were just days where I just thought, I don't know, I can't, I just don't think I can today. And for me, when I'm thinking back on the year, Teshuvah is just coming back to her. And feeling like, guess what? I still love you. You know, guess what? I'm still here. Like, I want to run away, and I'm returning consciously with my whole heart and my whole body and my whole soul back to you to do this another day. And that felt like a process, a lot of mornings. And so I think that was my Teshuvah this year. When I think about Elul returning, right now, I am trying to return back to who I am, separate from being a mom and separate from being a rabbi, and just re-meeting myself. I live in a new city. I live in a new house. I have older kids who I feel like I'm just getting to know again. I have a husband who has gone through a great trauma alongside me. I was sick and I have long COVID. So I need to get to know every aspect of myself as a person who has a chronic illness, as a person who has gone through this great trauma, as a mother of people who have suffered and been in pain and who I have not been able to save, all of that. So in some ways, I feel return was every day this year with my daughter. And in some ways, I feel like, thank God for this practice of Elul, that I really did. When Elul, the first day of Elul came, when Rosh Chodesh Elul arrived, I was like, oh, me, I have a me. Like, right. Thank you, year. Thank you, calendar. Thank you, Jewish tradition and wisdom, for reminding me that I need to do the me part, and the me separate from all the other roles that I play on a moment to moment, day to day, year by year basis.
What you shared it's making me tear up. It's so profound. I think that there's so much compassion in granting yourself this permission to focus Elul on yourself. And I think the idea of being gentle with ourselves and allowing us and telling ourselves that that's actually necessary to move forward. I think it's hard for so many of us to hear. We've all been, girding our loins to
Yes,
kind of just like
totally
make it through. And the idea of taking this moment to stop and just recalibrate and go, who am I now that I've been through this journey? Not that it's not necessarily over or anything, but we've all been through a lot. And the idea of focusing the tshuva inward, and that lesson of, I love the juxtaposition of both, where you practiced tshuva every morning with your beautiful daughter, to understand that it's a process that's hard and that
Yeah.
takes energy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come easily, and it might even take practice and repetition. And then to also tell yourself, I need to do this for me too. I need to figure out who I am in this moment, how I am walking into this new year. Thank you. I'm gonna sit with that one.
Well, I wanted to say two things based on what you said. One is that that's how I think about the word spiritual practice, what you just said. Like, it's like you go to baseball practice and you go to spiritual practice. It's like, you practice, every part of it is trying again. And it's not really about getting better. Like, you're probably not going to play for the major leagues in baseball, and there is no major leagues in spiritual practice. It's not about like getting to go to Tokyo to be in the Olympics, whatever, any of those metaphors. It's really about just like, okay, this is every day is practice. And I didn't know it as a full body experience the way I know it now because of my year with my daughter. And the other piece that I think is important to share, just in the, I saw that something you wrote about HerTorah is about like genuine experience. And I think it's important to say that my kids are at sleepaway camp. My two older kids are at sleepaway camp. And I was girding my loins like that. Totally. I get that. Like 100%, like really 100% for this entire COVID time. And then they went to sleepaway camp. And my youngest is at day camp, and I had these long days and I was just crying. Like, I was just crying. And I was like, what? Like, this is not what I expected. I expected to feel lighter, but instead I was feeling like overwhelmed by grief. And I started writing the experience from March 15th or whatever it was, 2020, to myself. And it was only in that experience of writing and returning that I realized, oh, that's what I'm doing. I'm returning. Like, I need to return so I can live. And so it wasn't this like, oh, I'm so spiritually wise and I know that in Elul I have to return. Although I did feel it on Rosh Chodesh Elul, like I get an opportunity, but I didn't exactly know what I was going to do with it until I was just crying all the time. And it was just that space away from my children to have some time to feel and to what do you talk about when you ungird? I don't know, unbuckle. I don't even want to, that's too far, right? Okay, whatever. But, to loosen my heart, I'll to loosen my tight chest.
Much better.
And to be like, I'm, what I think about now is like, this process of returning back to March 2020 has actually allowed me to swim in my sea of grief without drowning.
That too, I think like any of the therapists who we've spoken to through SVIVAH or any of the amazing women who I get to hang out with, the idea of moving forward without taking that time to reflect backward is actually does more harm than good. That the actual healing comes from that return that you're describing. And I mean, kol hakavod to you for taking that time. I think you're right. I think all of us, rather than finding words in any machzor prayer book this year, I think even just sitting still and letting ourselves grieve and reflect on what we've traversed. I think the idea of taking a foot forward into a year to come, none of us could have thought, like sitting back on Rosh Hashanah before 2020, none of us would have imagined. And I think thinking about praying for a year to come now takes on a whole new meaning. But without that reflection of being able to just process the grief and the loss and understanding, like, we've been through that and I'm still here. That in and of itself is huge, a huge lesson. And I'm just, before anything, like, refuah shlema to your family and you, like, wow, I had no idea that you guys were holding that for so long. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, I know this isn't where we thought the conversation would go, but I would say that this year, I feel like I'm much more in Tisha Bav than I am in Rosh Hashanah. I mean, just, like, it's okay. And it's okay. Like, you just get to, I mean, Rosh Hashanah will come even if I don't want it to, if I'm not in the mood, like Rosh Hashanah doesn't care about how I'm feeling today, and that's really good. And when I was going through Lamentations to prepare to teach for Tisha B'Av this year, there was two verses that were back to back. Just because you said, like, the machs or the, like, do you have anything for us? I'm still in Lamentations, and there were these two verses. I think it was in chapter 3, where there was one line where the author writes, God, you've always been there for me. God, I know that you're gonna swoop in and, still be there. And then the next line is, how could you abandon me like this? You'll never come. I feel nothing. I feel only hopeless, And I was like, cool, thanks. Like, thank you, lamenter, because I feel that exact thing. I'm like, I know for sure God is present in this misery. And I'm also like, why, how, echa, and so it's both. And it's okay. And this is what I said to my community on Tisha B'Av, like, you probably feel both, like, so grateful to be alive and so grateful to have made it, and also so angry and so sad. And okay, so the people who watched the temple get destroyed also felt that thousands of years ago. And so you're in good company, like, hold both of them, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I, I'm grateful for leaders giving us permission to do what we need in this moment and to take what we need from the rituals that we have, the calendar that we have, and to let it feed us in the way that we need it to, so that we can use it to just process and grow. You mentioned that you actually got to teach a community, and as one of my favorite community holders, I think a lot of us have felt bereft of community. A lot of us have discovered community in different places that were often surprising this year. What might you have to offer by way of thinking about community's role in this new year?
Well, it's so hard. I mean, I would just want to say that first. Like, I we went on a camping trip with our beloved Brooklyn community because we thought that would be the safest thing to do. And it was really, really beautiful and also really, really heartbreaking. That's how I feel about being a community right now, is like, you appreciate it 1,000 times more than you could have possibly been capable of appreciating it before COVID, or at least maybe not all of you who are joining us, but likely many of us feel that sense of need and the sense of absence. And what I said in the beginning about learning how to be in families of creation, that's usually used in like psychological terminology to mean like people you get married to. And then, or people you partner with and then create a family together in whatever way that means for each of us. I'm using it now to mean community. Like, I'm using it now to mean we create, and, queer people have been saying this forever. So it's not like, oh, Rabbi Sara, you're so wise. It's like, no, I'm borrowing it. We're always recycling ideas and reimagining what they can mean for our own lives. It's really about, how do we build families of creation, communities where we deeply care for one another, not just I bring you, I mean, it's great. Like, I bring you food when you have a baby, but so much of our inner lives and inner transitions are invisible to everyone else or most other people. And so at Beloved Brooklyn, our hope was that we were there for all the interstitial moments, all the in-betweens, when there was no cake to be brought for a new baby. There was no, funeral, Shiva to sit. It was just the transitions in our lives that needed honoring and needed people to sit with us and look at us and see us for our full selves and say, I understand, or I hear you, or I'm sorry, or I love you. So for me, I think the lesson I'm taking out of COVID times, I mean, not that we're out of COVID times, but one of the lessons I'm taking is everything is a fractal. So the ways we can understand that we are separate selves that have separate needs, and yet we live in these interconnected families of creation, that teaches us how to be in larger communities and in the world. So if I learn to return to Eva over and over again, even when all I want to do is run away, then that is part of the lesson of how to be in community with people who are killing me right now, who are just like, all I want to do is run away. Well, guess what? These are your people. Yeah. And you're not going to run away. No, if you've made a commitment to these people. And this, I think, also is part of what does it mean to build obligation in Jewish life. It's not only about adhering to different laws, although those laws do bring us closer to community much of the time. But for people who don't live within the Jewish halachic, Jewish legal framework, how do we live in obligation to one another? And so I think it comes from our closest, most intimate relationships and teaches us how to be with those who we are obligated to, even when they make us want to run away and make us crazy. And I don't think we get a lot of spaces in our lives to practice that.
Yeah.
And that's what I want Jewish community to be at its very best, a place to practice that. Like we were saying about spiritual practice, where you don't do great all the time, but you try and you practice. And I think often in the ways that we've individualized our Jewish lives, like I want this piece and I want this piece and I want this piece. I'm going to do Hebrew school and then I'm going to do this Torah study and I'm going to do this, which is all good in and of themselves. We need a lot more practice at the other piece, which is just being in messy, obligated, loving community together. How we're going to do that in COVID, I don't know. How we do that in COVID, I don't have any answers to that. I wish I knew. If you find out, please let me know. I want to do it. But we have some like small groups to practice at Beloved Brooklyn, and I'm sure many people who are with us, who are listening, are part of small groups that help us practice community of obligation. How we do it, beyond Zoom and in real life, or whatever, Zoom is real life, how we do it in person. I think we're going to have to learn all of that when we emerge.
I love that you like how to family each other. That idea is, I think family is a laden word for a lot of people for now and always. It's you also just gave, spiritual leaders a new day job of being, family counselors. So
I mean, aren't we? Come on now. We should just own it. I mean, you already are, so let's own it and let's lean into it.
You're right. I think I'm hoping that we're all recognizing and able to more clearly see and identify what we're missing. So many of us live away from our immediate family of origin, and have created many of our families of creation. And we're all feeling so distant. And I struggling with how this, for me at least, it was a constant struggle of how do I show up? How do I show up for these people who I love, who I care about, who I have some sort of obligation to, and that practice of not giving up and actually figuring out how to show up, and to power through and to figure out how to be there for those people, and vice versa, to also let others be there for me. Which isn't always easy either, because it might not be perfect. It might be the gesture. It might be totally off. But I think there's such, that is community, and it's what we're missing. And I think while we're missing from many who are used to walking into the thousands of people who show up for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, that might not be happening this year, or is happening this year. And that's the definition of community. That's one piece of community, but the family, the familial piece of community, that is what we need as humans, taking time to focus on that in the small, is really so key. And I think that we get distracted by the bigness of community, but recognizing that actually the small community is what our souls need.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think if I could say one last thing, it's that this conversation is making me feel stronger about putting two plastic tables side by side, like the long way in my backyard, which is what I had the vision of doing, and just having a Rosh Hashanah lunch and just inviting the people I want to see in my new community, in my new neighborhood, and that can be my Rosh Hashanah, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And just, you know, put some apples and honey on the table and call it a day, and that will set the stage for those relationships in Tishrei and in this new year.
Practice.
Yeah, practice.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Sara. That's amazing. Thank you for coming and doing this. I get to wish you a Shana Tova early. I hope that it is sweet, whatever those, and healthy. Wherever those apples are eaten, I hope the honey drips and drips and drips. I hope that we get to see more of whoever is out here listening to come back to hear more wisdom from the other scholars who are coming to join us. You can go to SVIVAH.org and join our mailing list and make sure that you don't miss a single one of these fabulous, fabulous humans who are definitely elevating my month and helping the high holidays take on new meaning this year, which I'm so incredibly grateful for. So you can do that at SVIVAH.org. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We do hope we see you, but if we don't, Shana Tova, a happy and healthy year to you. And we hope to see you all soon. Thank you so much, Rabbi, for coming today. I'm so grateful.
My pleasure. Thank you.